A young man is sentenced to 5 years in prison for a crime he thought would never destroy his life. But the moment Ron Decker enters prison, he discovers that surviving behind bars requires more than just serving his time. Fortunately, he catches the attention of Earl Copen, a powerful inmate who has spent 18 years building respect and influence inside the prison. Under Earl's protection, Ron slowly learns how the prison really works. But when Ron's sentence gets even longer and danger starts closing in, Earl makes a decision that could change both of their lives forever. The movie starts with a young man named Ron Decker getting arrested after police find a large amount of marijuana on him. Because he gets treated like a dealer instead of just someone who had drugs for personal use, a judge gives him a harsh sentence of 5 years in prison. This is much worse than Ron expected for a first offense. Once he gets to prison, Ron quickly sees that the inmates are split into separate groups. Black inmates, Mexican inmates, and white inmates all stick to their own circles. Ron learns fast that staying safe means finding someone to protect him. Another inmate tells him to go talk to a man named Earl Copen. Earl is an older convict who has been in prison for 18 years on a murder charge, and by now almost everyone respects him. Over the years, he has built strong connections. He is friendly with the guards, and he even helps the captain of the guards by typing up reports and notices. Ron tries to ask Earl for some advice about his own case, but Earl brushes him off and says he is busy right now. Soon after, Ron watches Earl and his group rough up another inmate and take his things by force. The moment a guard looks their way, they act completely normal, like nothing happened. Ron is placed in a cell with an inmate named Jan, who is transgender. Jan warns Ron that he is young and good-looking, and that the predators in this prison will take advantage of him if he is not careful. That same evening, Earl's close friend Vito notices Ron talking to another inmate known as Psycho Mike. Vito warns Earl that Mike and his group like to target new inmates and that Ron could be in danger. Jan also warns Ron and tells him he should try to get a knife to protect himself. The next day, Ron finds Earl in the gym and tells him what is going on, asking how he can get a weapon. Earl tells him to slow down, saying that getting into a fight now could add more time to his sentence. Instead, Earl goes to talk to Psycho Mike himself, along with some of his men, and makes it clear that Ron is under his protection. Mike does not want to make an enemy out of Earl, so he backs off right away, and nobody from that group bothers Ron again. Ron starts spending more time with Earl and his group. One day, guards catch some of Earl's men drinking homemade alcohol on the first floor. Ron tries to warn them in time, but they cannot get rid of all the evidence. So Ron ends up getting caught along with everyone else. As punishment, they are all sent to separate cells. Earl is impressed that Ron tried to protect his friends instead of just thinking about himself. He sends Ron cigarettes and a note through another inmate, telling him what to say if he gets questioned. A week later, when officers question Ron, he sticks to the story and says he was only passing by and was not drinking with anyone. Because of this, every other inmate involved gets an extra year added to his sentence, but Ron does not get punished at all. Earl also quietly writes good things about Ron in his file, hoping it will help him at his next court date. Not long after, Ron sees another inmate get stabbed to death in the yard during free time. It shakes him badly. Earl can tell that Ron does not really belong in a place like this, so he has him sent to the prison doctor. The doctor fakes a report saying Ron has a broken shoulder, which gets him admitted to the infirmary. This gives Ron a safer place to stay for a while. Once Ron is back on his feet, the captain personally tells him that he is being moved to Earl's cell block at Earl's request, so he will have real protection. Soon after Ron returns to the general population, the black inmates start a work strike that turns into a full riot. Guards open fire to bring things under control, and by the end of it, dozens of inmates are dead. The whole prison goes into lockdown. About a day later, the captain asks Earl and a few of his most trusted men to reopen the kitchen so the guards and other inmates can be fed. Earl brings Ron along to eat with them, and Ron finally asks him something that has been on his mind. Why is Earl doing so much for him when he barely knew him a month ago? Earl explains that when he first came to this prison at around Ron's age, nobody looked out for him, and he still remembers how scared he was back then. He does not want Ron to go through the same thing. On Earl's advice, Ron starts working in the prison barbershop cutting hair, and he also signs up for a class inside the prison. Things look like they are going to be okay, but that does not last. During class, a big muscular inmate named Buck Rowan starts noticing Ron. Ron tries to keep his distance and focus on his schoolwork, but one day Rowan catches him alone in the washroom and tries to sexually assault him. He only stops because their teacher happens to walk in at that moment. This shakes Ron badly. He feels weak and humiliated, and he starts to think that he cannot keep depending on Earl to fight his battles for him. Without telling Earl, he gets an older inmate to get him a large knife, planning to go after Rowan himself. The older inmate warns Earl instead. Earl rushes to stop Ron, telling him that his anger is fair, but going after Rowan now now, with guards watching everything, could get him hit with new charges. Earl promises to deal with Rowan through his own people instead. Ron does not listen. He takes the knife and goes straight to Rowan's cell. Rowan is not scared of him at all. Earl notices Ron is missing and rushes over just in time. He attacks Rowan himself, but Rowan is much stronger and slams Earl against the bars. That is when Ron sees his chance and stabs Rowan in the back, leaving him seriously hurt on the ground. Vito and the rest of Earl's men show up and quickly pull Ron and Earl away from the scene. Earl heads straight to the captain's office to make it look like he was somewhere else the whole time. The plan does not fully work though, because Rowan survives the attack and tells the guards that Ron and Earl were behind it. Both of them are thrown into solitary confinement while they wait for a hearing, but Earl is not done yet. He sends a message to his crew through the plumbing, and soon after, someone poisons Rowan in the hospital so he cannot testify against them. With their only witness dead, there is no real case left against Earl or Ron, and Earl refuses to admit to anything when officials question him. This makes the warden furious about how much power Earl has, and he starts planning to have Earl transferred to another prison. Ron's file also gets flagged, since the officials now see him as part of Earl's group. At Ron's next court hearing, instead of getting his sentence reduced, the judge adds another 5 years on the warden's recommendation. Ron loses his temper and starts cursing out the judge and his own lawyer. He is dragged back to a holding cell where his father, James Decker, comes to see him. His father promises to hire the best lawyer he can find and get Ron out. Meanwhile, in solitary confinement, the captain visits Earl and warns him that the new prison administration wants him transferred, partly because they are trying to pin Rowan's death on him too. Earl does not want to leave this prison under any circumstances, so he fakes a mental breakdown. He cuts himself with a blade, smears blood on his body, and scatters old food around his cell to make it look like he has lost his mind. The guards believe it and move him to the psychiatric ward instead of transferring him. Once he is out of the psych ward, Earl goes to see Ron and finds out how much extra time Ron is now facing. That is when Earl decides it is time to escape, and he wants Ron to come with him. Ron asks his father to set up a safe place for both of them in Costa Rica once they get out. Earl starts paying close attention to the daily routines in the prison, looking for a way out that will not get them caught. One day, while they are talking about their plan in the shower, a mentally unstable inmate starts singing loudly nearby. When Earl tells him to stop, the man attacks both Earl and Ron with a weapon made from a toothbrush, hurting Earl in the chest and Ron in the face. Since the attacker is black, tensions rise between the white and black inmates, until a leader from the black gang comes to see Earl in the hospital. He explains that the attacker was not mentally stable and asks Earl to keep the peace. Earl agrees, since he does not want to riot either. Later, another inmate kills the attacker and dumps his body in the prison garbage truck. This gives Earl an idea. Every day, a garbage truck drives in and out of the prison, and nobody ever checks what is inside it because everything gets crushed before it leaves. Because of that fear of getting crushed, nobody ever tries to hide inside. But if two people could survive the crusher, they could easily get out. Earl brings in his most trusted men to help with the plan. Vito and his friends bribe the truck drivers, and some inmates working in the kitchen sneak in 2 iron rods strong enough to jam the crusher. The night before the escape, Earl spends time with his closest friends and says goodbye to them. The next morning, he and Ron slip away from the line and hide in the kitchen with help from other inmates. They carry garbage bags and the iron rods out to the truck. Ron jumps in first, but just as Earl is about to follow, a guard shows up and shuts the kitchen door, trapping Earl outside. Inside the truck, Ron manages to jam his rod into the crusher just in time to avoid being crushed. The truck rolls through the checkpoint, where guards only check underneath like always, and it drives out through the gates, with Ron still hidden inside. Watching from the yard, Earl feels genuinely happy that Ron made it out, even though he did not. He later finds Vito and tells him that he did not manage to escape. Vito just laughs and tells him not to worry about it, saying that everyone already knows Earl is the one who really runs this prison, not the warden. He says the place would not be the same without him. Earl smiles quietly, seeming at peace with staying behind. Ron came into prison as a scared young man who simply wanted to survive. But Earl saw something in him and gave him the protection, guidance, and second chance that no one had given Earl when he was young. And in the end, Earl didn't need to escape to prove who really had power inside those walls. When Ron finally made it out, Earl was left behind. But he knew that at least one young man had escaped the life that could have destroyed him. If Earl's loyalty and the bond between him and Ron touched you, please subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us continue bringing powerful movie stories like this to life. Leave a like if you believe Earl made the right choice, and let me know in the comments. Would you have escaped with Ron or stayed behind with Earl? Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next movie recap.